dapat po munang alamin or matukoy ang pangunahing problema ng bansa upang mapagtuunan ng pansin at mabigyan ng solusyon.
We should have specific goals, do research, and make a policy that is fair for everyone.
Walang problema sa pulisiya. Iayos lang ang pagpapatupad.
Bago patubas ang batas, pag-aralan muna gusto ng government.
Two things, clarity and execution. Both, you need the communication and monitoring. As simple as that.
Mandato ng Philippine Institute for Development Studies o PIDS na gumawa ng mga pag-aaral at pananaliksik ng mga polisiya at programa ng pamahalaan at magbigay ng rekomendasyon sa mga mambabatas sa pagbabalangkas ng mga polisiyang makakatulong sa ating bansa. Sinusulong ng aming ahensya ang evidence-based policy making upang bigyan diin ang kahalagahan ng polisiya na batay sa datos at policy research na sumusuri sa tunay na kalagayan ng ating mga komunidad. Napakahalaga ng policy research, lalo na sa mga panahong dumadaan sa krisis ang ating bansa.
Kapag pulisiya ay pinag-aralan, susulong ang bayan!
In need of references for your research? Do you want a digital library that you can access for free anytime and anywhere? You don't have to look far. SERPI is here for you. SERPI is an online database of socioeconomic materials produced by the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, government agencies, research and academic institutions, and international organizations based in the Philippines. It is the country's first online repository of socioeconomic information, created for policymakers and development practitioners, researchers, educators, and students. To access SERPI, just visit the PIDS website and click the SERPI widget under the Databases tab, or type serp-p.pids.gov.ph. SERPI has a wide variety of materials such as journal articles, books, research papers, working papers, policy notes, audiovisual materials, and more. As of 2022, SERPI has more than 60 partner institutions contributing knowledge resources to the database. SERPI provides a comprehensive coverage of references encompassing 22 research themes: labor and education, gender and development, poverty, technology and innovation, trade and industry, and many more. On the enhanced website of SERPI, you can filter your research by keyword or author, publication type, research theme, or year published, all at the same time. SERPI has more than 7,000 publications and audiovisual materials that you can access and download for free. What are you waiting for? Visit SERPI now. Socioeconomic research portal for the Philippines, innovating knowledge exchange and policy research.
So what is PIDS? For over 40 years, the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, or PIDS, has been the country's foremost socioeconomic think tank. It conducts rigorous and objective policy research and analyses that help the government in crafting relevant policies, plans, and programs in support of the country's long-term vision and development goals. PIDS pursues its mandate through three basic programs: research, dissemination, and outreach. Through its research program, PIDS identifies and prioritizes studies, develops proposals, and conducts research on priority areas. The results of these studies are then disseminated through different platforms, publications, online resources, PIDS Corner, seminars, and the Development Policy Research Month, or DPRM, held every September. To shed light on key policy issues, the advice and expertise of the Institute's research fellows are also sought by policymakers, government agencies, private sector, and civil society. Since 1977, PIDS has completed numerous policy studies on a wide range of development topics. This brand of service has then translated to policies and programs that have improved the lives of every Filipino. Philippine Institute for Development Studies, service through policy research.
Dapat po munang alamin or matukoy ang pangunahing problema ng bansa upang mapagtuunan ng pansin at mabigyan ng solusyon.
We should have specific goals, do research, and make a policy that is fair for everyone.
Walang problema sa pulisiya. Iayos lang ang pagpapatupad.
Bago patubas ang batas, pag-aralan muna gusto ng government.
Two things, clarity and execution. Both, you need the communication and monitoring. As simple as that.
Mandato ng Philippine Institute for Development Studies o PIDS na gumawa ng mga pag-aaral at pananaliksik ng mga polisiya at programa ng pamahalaan at magbigay ng rekomendasyon sa mga mambabatas sa pagbabalangkas ng mga polisiyang makakatulong sa ating bansa. Sinusulong ng aming ahensya ang evidence-based policy making upang bigyan din ng kahalagahan ng polisiya na batay sa datos at policy research na sumusuri sa tunay na kalagayan ng ating mga komunidad. Napakahalaga ng policy research, lalo na sa mga panahong dumadaan sa krisis ang ating bansa.
Kapag pulisiya ay pinag-aralan, susulong ang bayan.
In need of references for your research? Do you want a digital library that you can access for free anytime and anywhere? You don't have to look far. SERPI is here for you. SERPI is an online database of socioeconomic materials produced by the Philippine Institute for Development Studies. Government agencies, research and academic institutions, and international organizations based in the Philippines. It is the country's first online repository of socioeconomic information, created for policymakers and development practitioners, researchers, educators, and students. To access SERPI, just visit the PIDS website and click the SERPI widget under the Databases tab, or type serp-p.pids.gov.ph. SERPI has a wide variety of materials such as journal articles, books, research papers, working papers, policy notes, audiovisual materials, and more. As of 2022, SERPI has more than 60 partner institutions contributing knowledge resources to the database. SERPI provides a comprehensive coverage of references encompassing 22 research themes: labor and education, gender and development, poverty, technology and innovation, trade and industry, and many more. On the enhanced website of SERPI, you can filter your research by keyword or author, publication type, research theme, or year published, all at the same time. SERPI has more than 7,000 publications and audiovisual materials that you can access and download for free. What are you waiting for? Visit SERPI now. Socioeconomic Research Portal for the Philippines, innovating knowledge exchange and policy research.
So what is PIDS? For over 40 years, the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, or PIDS, has been the country's foremost socioeconomic think tank. It conducts rigorous and objective policy research and analyses that help the government in crafting relevant policies, plans, and programs in support of the country's long-term vision and development goals. PIDS pursues its mandate through three basic programs: research, dissemination, and outreach. Through its research program, PIDS identifies and prioritizes studies, develops proposals, and conducts research on priority areas. The results of these studies are then disseminated through different platforms, publications, online resources, PIDS Corner, seminars, and the Development Policy Research Month, or DPRM, held every September. To shed light on key policy issues, the advice and expertise of the Institute's research fellows are also sought by policymakers, government agencies, private sector, and civil society. Since 1977, PIDS has completed numerous policy studies on a wide range of development topics. This brand of service has then translated to policies and programs that have improved the lives of every Filipino. Philippine Institute for Development Studies, service through policy research.
Welcome to the PIDS webinar series. Before we start our virtual event, we have some reminders. For attendees, your microphone is automatically muted upon entry. If you wish to join the discussion, click the Q&A icon, type your question, and click send. For Facebook viewers, you may send your question using the comment section. Remember to keep your questions concise and direct to the point. We will screen all questions to ensure that they are relevant to the webinar topic and the presentation. The moderator will read the questions during the open forum and cover as many as possible depending on the available time. This webinar is being recorded and live streamed on the PIDS and SERPI Facebook pages. The recording will also be made publicly available on the PIDS YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to your active participation.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to our last PIDS webinar this year. I am Millie Herona from the Public Affairs Division of the PIDS Research Information Department, and I will be your MC for today. Today's event titled Enhancing Conflict Resolution Through the Barangay Justice System, the impact of Project Brave in BARM is in partnership with the Innovations for Poverty Action or IPA. Building on a collaborative memorandum of understanding signed earlier this year, PIDS and IPA have joined forces for knowledge sharing. Through webinars like the July 27th session on M-Education, we have explored diverse topics. Today, we turn another IPA study highlighting Project Brave, Breaking Ascent of Violent Extremism in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region of the Muslim Mindanao. Implemented by the Sinergia Foundation Incorporated, this initiative aims to strengthen local governance in setting disputes and resolving conflicts through the Barangay Justice System or BJS. Apart from the esteemed speakers, we are honored to have discussants who will offer informative insights on the findings and recommendations of the report. If you have any questions to our panelists, please don't hesitate to use the Q&A box below of the Zoom app. You may also send us your questions through the comment box as we are also live on Facebook. To formally start our program, Dr. Aniceto C. Orbeta Jr., President of PIDS, will provide the opening remarks here with us. Dr. Orbeta, the virtual floor is yours.
Thanks, Meili. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today for another PIDS public webinar. Allow me to greet the following officials joining us today. Innovations for Poverty Action Country Director, Aftab Upel, U.S. Department of State's INL Deputy Director, Luke Bruns, Department of Science and Technology Director, Romeo Ongpoy Jr., National Economic and Development Authority Regional Office 9 Director, Maria Felicidad Guerrero, Lorma Community Development Foundation Incorporated Executive Director, Andrew Cesar Rimando, University of San Carlos Department of Economics Chair, Julius Relampagos. I would also like to greet those watching through our PIDS and SERPI Facebook pages, especially those from various government agencies, local government units, academia, civil society, and media. Last Monday, we delved into the pivotal and emerging challenges facing both the Philippines and the APEC region during our PSCN planning workshop. Building on this forum's focus on regional issues, we shift our lens closer to home today, focusing on a crucial aspect of the Filipino life, the Barangay Justice System or BJS. From 1980 to 2005, the Barangay Justice System has consistently resolved an average of approximately 160,000 cases annually. Over the years, this figure has significantly increased, while the proportion of cases undergoing mediation has remained notably high. The BJS plays an essential role in peaceful resolution of conflicts at the barangay level. It expedites the justice process and alleviates the burden of the courts on the courts by dealing with reconcilable criminal offenses and civil disputes. The webinar today, jointly organized with the Innovations for Poverty Action or IPA, focuses on Project Brave or Breaking Ascent of Violent Extremism in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao or BARM. This project, executed by the Sinergia Foundation, is designed to reinforce the BJS in BARM. During this webinar, IPA will share the findings of its impact evaluation on Project Brave, showing its potential to improve conflict resolution in BARM and nationwide. It's important to note that the BJS is distinct from the traditional courts or judicial tribunals, functioning as an administrative entity at the barangay level It provides a venue for community members to resolve disputes outside of the formal justice system. The primary objective of the BGS is to offer a more expedient and less expensive alternative to the conventional court-based resolution of conflicts. However, implementing the BGS is at the local level faces several challenges. These include a lack of adequate training and seminars for those involved, the recurrence of similar cases, and the occasional unwillingness of parties to participate. These issues can impede the effectiveness of the BGS. Therefore, it is imperative to address these challenges to ensure that the BGS operates smoothly and effectively within local communities. That is why it is our pleasure to have IPA Associate Research Manager Maria Isabel Fernandez as this afternoon's presenter. She will share the insights from their impact study of Project Brave. Joining here are discussants are Supreme Court of the Philippines Associate Court Administrator Maria Regina Adoracion Filomena Ignacio, Bar Ministry of Interior and Local Government Minister Shah Elijah B. Dumama Alba, and Bar Ministry of Interior and Local Government Barangay and Community Affairs Division Chief Cecilia Pilobilio. I encourage everyone to have an open and inquiring mind while listening to the presentation and discussion to participate actively during the open forum. Let us work together to explore the potential of the BGS to become an even more effective tool for conflict resolution in the Philippines. Again, good afternoon and thank you for joining us today. Back to you, Mayley.
Thank you very much, Dr. Orbeta, for your opening remarks. We appreciate you for emphasizing one crucial aspect of Filipino life. Indeed, there has long been a traditional local system of resolving disputes in the Philippines, and BJS proves this. Now, allow me to introduce to you our moderator for today's discussion, Ms. Carisha Ann Cruz. Ms. Isha is a Senior Policy and Project Development Associate at IPA Philippines. She conducts policy research outreach work, including engaging with key partners in governments, NGOs, foundations, and multilateral aid agencies. She also supports project development efforts of the country office, particularly steering the education and social protection portfolios. She holds a bachelor's degree in communication research and a master's degree in development economics from the University of the Philippines. She will introduce our presenter and discussants and lead the conversation during our open forum later. Ms. Isha, the virtual floor is yours.
Okay, thanks so much, Maylee. Good afternoon po, everyone. I'm Isha Cruz from IPA Philippines, and I will be your moderator for this afternoon's webinar. So today, as Dr. Babes mentioned, we will be hearing about a recently completed study of IPA that assessed interventions that aim to strengthen local systems of governance through the barangay justice system, or what we call the Kadrona Barangay, specifically in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao. So the study was done in partnership with Synergia Foundation, who led the interventions for the BGS under Project Brave and BAR, and with the support of the Global Community Engagement and Resilience Fund. I believe we have guests from Synergia and GSERT today, so thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for working with IPA to complete this very important study. And actually, we're very excited to share this research with you. Since again, this is a new study, it's an understudied area with limited evidence. What we have now on how community-based justice system works as an effective dispute resolution mechanism, and so that this research tries to fill in that gap to determine how we can empower local governance bodies such as the BJS to increase access to justice and build community awareness and trust in their system so that it can contribute to improved social cohesion and social justice, especially in areas affected by conflict. But before we proceed with the presentation, we would like to start with a poll question. So we'd like to know first from the audience your thoughts about the following question for today, which is, what do you think are the key factors to improve access to justice within local communities? So yeah, you can answer this question using your phones or other devices by scanning the QR code flashed on the screen, or I think the Mentimeter link will be also flashed on the screen, or I think will be shared in the chat via Zoom or FB. So we provided some options for you to choose from. So just select which ones resonates with you more. So we have options such as enhancing capacity and competence of the barangay to mediate conflicts, raising community awareness about local conflict mediation services, streamlining administrative processes in the community level, and competence and character of elected barangay captains. As we know, or we'll know more later on, that the BJS is led by our barangay officials. So we'll provide, or we'll give you around 30 seconds, maybe or a minute, to answer for this question. We just wanted to hear your thoughts. There's no right or wrong answer. We just want to hear what you think will be the critical or key factors for you to improve access to justice, especially within the local communities. And perhaps later in the study, we will see, if some of these answers will be, some of these will appear as answers to this question. Okay, and I guess in a few seconds, we'll see the results of the poll. Yeah, a few more seconds. Okay, maybe I think we have passed 30 seconds. Maybe Meili, will we be able to share the poll results before we proceed? Ayan. Okay, so I think a lot answered the first option, enhancing capacity and competence of barangay to mediate conflicts. And then we have, raising community awareness, and then streamlining administrative processes, and then competence and care of the barangay captain. So this is very interesting. We'll see, we'll get to discuss this more as we go on to the presentations and also our discussions with our guests today. So thank you so much for participating in our call. So I guess we can get started on the main part of our program. So I'd like to welcome our speaker, Ms. Maria Isabel Fernandez, Associate Research Manager at IPA Philippines. So ISA has managed a portfolio of research projects on consumer protection, governance, education, financial inclusion, and economic inclusion. She also leads our M&E capacity building initiatives and partner engagements. Previously, she worked for the Angelo King Institute for Economics and Business Studies, and she holds a master's degree in economics from De La Salle University. So ISA was part of the research team that led this evaluation study, and I'm sure we're now all excited to learn more about their work. So without further ado, Isa, you have the virtual floor.
Thank you, Isha. So let me just share my screen. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. As Isha mentioned, I'm Isa Fernandez. I was part of the research team that conducted the impact evaluation of Synergia Foundation's Barangay Justice System program. And I'm very excited to talk more about this study. But before I get into that, let me just briefly introduce IPA and what we do. So Innovations for Poverty Action, we are an international nonprofit founded in 2002. that discovers and promote effective solutions to global poverty problems. We have three streams of work, namely research, policy, and right fit evidence. So IPA's core competence is the successful design and implementation of rigorous impact evaluation studies to measure the effectiveness of programs and policies aimed at helping the poor. We also support our partners to generate and use data and evidence similar to what we're doing now by disseminating our results from this study. And we also help bring proven approaches to scale across the globe. And to do this, we position ourselves in the middle of all essential players. That includes academics or specialists, implementers, government agencies, and funders. The outcome of our work would be the hundreds of evaluations in our portfolio. IPA is uniquely positioned to identify and share the most promising innovations and to move them along the path to scale globally. And in the Philippines, our projects have led to the establishment of a strong network of partners across government, international organizations, and NGOs. And some of these projects, specifically under governance, were in collaboration with, for example, the Supreme Court, where with their support, IPA conducted landmark studies that evaluated 3 judicial reforms to address the high volume of pending cases and severe delays in resolving cases, which deny citizens the ability to access swift and fair justice. These reforms were on the e-court system, continuous trial guidelines, and small claims. Overall, we found that the reforms resulted in some positive impacts, particularly in improvements in case duration and case disposition. Now, IPA and the Supreme Court were jointly worked on establishing the Supreme Court Data Hub to support further evidence-based policies and reforms. We do intend to continue supporting the Supreme Court in this endeavor. In addition to this work, we also conducted a process evaluation of the government's flagship development framework for conflict-affected areas, the PAMANA program, and we also have what we call the Displaced Livelihoods Initiative. This is supported by the IKEA Foundation. So the reality is that there's quite limited evidence about how to best respond to displacement and strengthen outcomes for displaced and host communities. The Philippines is not a stranger to displacement, especially with the Marawi siege and the Zamboanga siege. So despite the fact that due to ongoing conflicts and other crises, displacement is really at an all-time high and is projected to climb in the coming decades. So the fund aims to support generalizable, policy-relevant impact evaluations and related research to help advance our understanding of the problem and how to best respond. So if there's anyone that would like to partner with us to conduct research that could possibly be funded by the Displaced Livelihoods Initiative, we do encourage you to reach out to us. Okay, so aligned with our third stream of work, we also have been providing tailored M&E support to local organizations that conduct programs for preventing and countering violent extremism in the BARM or nearby provinces. This is with the objective of transforming these small organizations into learning organizations. And this is through the funding support of the Global Community Engagement and Resilience Fund, which is the same donor that funded this impact evaluation. Okay, so that's my brief introduction to IPA. And so now I'd like to talk more about the study on the barangay justice system. So as Dr. Babes mentioned, the barangay justice system is an important component in settling disputes across the entire country. So, however, in many rural communities in the Philippines, residents traditionally resort to respected religious and tribal leaders, often elders, to seek counsel for resolving their conflicts. This is especially true for areas where courts lack presence or they are inaccessible due to steep time and financial costs. The long-standing conflicts in BARM in particular have been a particularly major hindrance to the acceptance and usage of any formal court procedures. And this is where the barangay justice system leverages on these traditional customs for informal conflict mediation. So it presents a model for community-based justice implemented by the basic political unit of the country, the barangay. So the essence of the BJS is to have a peaceful and harmonious resolution of conflicts within the barangay instead of adversarial proceedings in court, by compelling parties to settle the conflicts through the intervention of barangay leaders and respected members of the barangay. Right, so the BJS, or the Katarungan Pambarangay, this is a community-based dispute mechanism administered by the barangay that generally covers disputes among residents of the same city or municipality. It is composed of the lupong tagapamayapa, which is the lupon chairman. Typically, it's the barangay captain, but sometimes it's also someone else, as well as appointed lupon members, which typically represent the sitios. We also have what we call the Pangkat na Takapagkasundo. This is a conciliation panel composed of 3 chosen lupon members to help with the disputes brought to the lupon. Parties can decide who their pangkat would be. If they cannot come to the decision, then they would be determined by draw lots. Unfortunately, many barangays in the Philippines, they do not have a functional BJS, nor appointed lupon members even. And if they do have this composition, their knowledge of the necessary BJS procedures, documentations, and other requirements can be lacking. And this is where Synergia comes in. The Synergia Foundation, with funding support from GSERF, implemented several interventions to raise awareness and trust of communities in the justice system, with the ultimate aim of increasing access to meaningful justice within these communities in the BARM. And so these interventions were part of a larger program called Project Brave, Breaking Ascent of Violent Extremism. And they included, training of barangay leaders and staff on the procedures of the BJS, which is one, mediation skills, that's the second one, and third one on documentation. They also provided barangays with a toolkit on best practices. And for the communities, they conducted awareness campaigns and town hall meetings. So it is a simple program that was implemented in 4 municipalities in the farm, namely Jolo in Sulu, Tiagapo and Kapatagan in Lanao del Sur, Buldon and Datu Paglas in Maguindanao. So these areas have been extensively affected by conflict and violence in past decades, which are now being helped by Synergia. So these are our research questions for the study. Did the program increase knowledge and skills necessary to operate the BJS? Did the program increase community awareness about the BJS services? Did the program increase usage of these services by the community? And did it ultimately lead to improvements in community trust and perception? So all impact evaluation methodologies have the same aim, which is to identify an appropriate comparison group. In that way, we can estimate the impact of a program. The gold standard would be a randomized control trial, where barangays are randomly assigned to treatment and control. However, in this case, the program was already being conducted and had already been rolled out to non-random barangays that have had a long relationship with Synergia in the past. And so a randomized control trial was not feasible in this case. And so we pivoted to propensity score matching to identify a valid counterfactual distribution of outcomes in treated barangays. So we have barangays within the select provinces, and you have treatment barangays that were selected by Synergia to receive the program. And then we have control barangays, which we identified through PSM to use as a comparison group for this impact evaluation. So PSM helps select samples of observations from our control treatment groups that are highly comparable to use in our analysis. Specifically, it identifies samples of observations that are well balanced across confounding variables that affect both treatment assignment and your outcome variable. So among the 98 barangays that received these trainings and the toolkit and all these interventions, as well as the remaining 1,000, around 1,400 barangays across the provinces of Maguindanao, Lanao del Sur, and Sulu. From those barangays, we identified 75 best match pairs of barangays to include in the study sample. So in total, we have 75 barangays per control group that are most statistically similar to and comparable to the 75 chosen treated barangays. And because the sample is quite small, inference was based on re-randomization approach, which is less reliant on large samples. So to determine the barangay's propensity score, we used publicly available barangay level data on observable characteristics such as available amenities, altitude and temperature, gender and age composition, employment, poverty incidence, and prevalence of conflicts. So the figure on the right side of the screen maps out the propensity scores of these barangays. The blue line refers to control barangays. The orange line refers to treatment barangays. And if you look at the figure on the left, these are the propensity scores of all barangays. And if you can see from the mapping, control barangays are just quite different from most of the treated barangays. Their propensity scores are vastly different. However, if we were to isolate this only for the matched barangays, as shown in the figure on the right, we see that it's very clear that there's a significant improvement in the balance of propensity scores between the matched barangays. And among these 150 barangays, we collected data from them between November and December 2022, so fairly recently last year. And this was conducted less than a month after program end due to funding constraints. So we had a 97.3% success rate, surveying the 146 barangays out of our target 150. There were 3 different surveys conducted in each of these barangays, targeting 5 randomly selected households in the barangay, 3 members of the Lupon or the BJS, and the barangay secretary. So these were done in Sulu, Lanao del Sur, Maguindanao, and the specific areas where the treated barangays were Jolo, Piagapo, Kapatagan, Buldon, and Datu Paglas. The survey instruments included modules on socioeconomic and demographic characteristics, community conflict and mediation, knowledge and awareness of the BJS, and case disposition. So designing our instruments, especially for barangay officials or Lupon members who were often respected elders and traditional leaders in these communities, was quite tricky. First, these are sensitive areas. They have a long-standing history of conflict. So questions that may seem innocuous or innocent to us or in other areas outside of the BARM could still cause great offense to our target respondents. So assessing them, especially based on their knowledge and capabilities to mediate conflicts, did place us in a very difficult position. And so one particular innovation of the study was the use of vignettes. So to put the respondents, the Lupon respondents, in a hypothetical but realistic scenario to prompt for more reflective responses. So we presented them with the concrete and realistic nature of the vignette contextualizes the scenario so that it makes the situation familiar and interesting to respondents. So after several focus group discussions with barangays in Buldon, Maguindanao. We identified common conflicts in these areas and how barangays approached mediating these types of conflicts. And from there, we developed our own vignette to use for this study. So here is a snapshot of the vignette that we designed. So let me read it for all of you. And of course, this was translated to their local language, like Magindanaon or Maranao, or Tausug. So imagine that there is a farmer named Ahmed who lives in barangay, whatever barangay the Lupon member is in. Ahmed has worked on the same plot of land since he began farming 40 years ago. It was the same plot of land that his father worked on. Ahmed grows corn. Part of his harvest is given to a distributor that brings it to the market, and part of it is turned into animal feed for his animals. Ahmed, his family, and even his extended family, they rely on the farm as their main source of income. However, one day, Karim, who studied and worked outside of the barangay, outside of the area in South Cotabato, comes back to settle. And he suddenly demands that Ahmed pay him rent for the use of the plot of land, claiming that his grandfather was the rightful owner. Ahmed, who has worked in that plot of land his entire life, refuses. So this starts a conflict between Ahmed and Karim. And so from there, we go through the entire BJS process journey with each Lupon member, asking them questions on how they would approach the issue from beginning to end. So now we were able to gauge more information from them through the use of vignettes and storytelling, and getting them through the whole process to really gauge their understanding of these process procedures without having to ask them directly. And so using that approach, we were able to avoid that issue of causing offense or of people becoming defensive when we try to measure their knowledge. But knowledge is a latent trait, and latent traits cannot be observed directly, which is why we measure and quantify the trait using this assessment. But because the assessment only gives us a measurable proxy of knowledge, we evaluated to what level the questions discriminate between respondents on the basis of how well the respondent knew the material they were tested on. And to do that, we used item response analysis using a 2-parameter item response logistic model to estimate parameters on difficulty and discrimination, and also to reduce the dimension of the variables in the case vignette by generating a score for each of the major procedures of the BJS. And from here, we estimate the impact of Synergia's interventions after collecting the data and designing the research. And what we found from the findings was that we see robust, significant increases in the general knowledge of Lupon members, the knowledge of mediation and conciliation procedures and strategies. And we also see robust increases in the knowledge of amicable settlement, documentation enforcement among treated barangays. So we do see robust, significant increases across a different array of areas regarding how to operate a barangay justice system. We also see significant increases in community awareness of the Lupon and the jurisdiction of the BJS among treated barangays. One thing to note, however, is we do not see impact on the intended usage of the BJS. Although this was, or the trust, we also don't see any improvements or differences in trust. But this was expected. We conducted the data collection immediately after program end, and changes in behavior perception, they typically take much longer to manifest. They're long-term outcomes and were unlikely to be captured by a survey that was conducted so quickly after the program ended. So this matches with our a priori expectations. So the magnitude of the impact, however, is rather small. So we see 15 to 32% standard deviation increase on knowledge. We also see a 2 to 5.8 percentage points increase on awareness. So the magnitude is small. Nonetheless, user awareness and capacity. So I'm almost done. User awareness and the capacity to provide quality service. They are two necessary requisites for increased usage. The immediate impact of Synergia's programs on these two outcomes, they present a promising building block for establishing the BJS as a trusted and utilized mechanism for peaceful conflict resolution. So with that, we do have recommendations on how to improve the program intensity, which is to target knowledge gaps, so provide more tailored BJS training or remedial sessions, leveraging on practical sessions, which is to incorporate more practical sessions such as role playing during the training proper, because we did see some positive correlation even between informal conflict mediation experience and knowledge assessment scores. Also to increase the intervention dosage, so increasing activity frequencies. I believe there are only 3 training sessions that were conducted in each barangay. So, and also conducting further research. So we also recommend looking at or assessing more longer term impact in the future to evaluate whether and to what extent increased BJS capacity and community awareness translate into sustaining behavioral and perception changes among the communities. So next steps on this, from evidence to policy discussions. On IPA's side, we do intend to engage key stakeholders to disseminate evidence and support them in applying this evidence. This is one way to do that, this webinar. So very thankful to PIDS for allowing us this opportunity, and also to build more momentum towards further research on strengthening community-based justice for promoting peace. So maraming salamat po. So if you ever want to reach out to us, here is my contact information. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much, Isa, for that very comprehensive presentation. Yeah, it's really interesting to see how you and the team were able to design this evaluation study using PSM to measure outcomes when, doing RCTs or randomized evaluations not feasible. And I think, the use of vignettes to measure outcomes, I think is quite novel and, something that can be even further explored in other similar studies in the future. In terms of the results, it's interesting to see how the training intervention led by Synergia had significant effects on increasing knowledge, strategies, and skills to be able to run a fully functioning PJS. And I'd say, capacity building interventions are one of the most common, interventions or programs done when we want to build skills and knowledge, and to see that being measured rigorously and be able to show impact implies that there could be a lot more opportunities and potential to really enhance the training and to achieve even greater outcomes for the justice sector, as seen in the study's recommendations. And then likewise, having complementary interventions such as increasing community awareness, like the town halls, can already do a lot to make sure like the end users or the beneficiaries of systems such as the BGS, so that they know about it, and perhaps in the future, when we're able to measure longer term outcomes, we might be able to see impacts in terms of utilizing the system and whether it has achieved the intended outcomes. Okay, so for those of you who already have questions in mind, you are very much welcome to send them via Zoom, using the Q&A function, or via the FB chat for those tuning in via Facebook. And we will get to your questions in a bit. So now that we've heard about the study, we are now going to hear from our esteemed discussants to share their thoughts and their reactions to the findings and the recommendations of the study and how it might help inform their own respective programs and initiatives in improving access to justice and maintaining peace in communities. So first, we will hear from our discussant from the Supreme Court of the Philippines. We are very honored to have Assistant Court Administrator Maria Regina Adoracion Filomena Ignacio. Assistant Court Ad Ignacio began her career in the judiciary in 1989 as court interpreter. In 1990, she graduated Bachelor of Laws from MLQU and became a lawyer in 1991. In 1994, she obtained her Master's of Laws from UST. In 2010, she was appointed as Chief of Office of the Office of Halls of Justice of the Supreme Court. In 2013, she was concurrently designated as Acting Chief Attorney. And on October 13, 2017, she was appointed as Assistant Court Administrator of the Supreme Court, where she handles the administrative supervision of courts in the cities of Manila, Makati, Mandaluyong, Muntinlupa, Pasay, Taguig, and in the Second Judicial Region. So everyone, please welcome Assistant Court Administrator Ignacio. Ma'am, you have the floor po.
Thank you. So, Dr. Aniceto C. Orbeta, President of PIDS, Mr. Aftab Opel, Country Director of IPA for the Philippines and Bangladesh, Ms. Cecilia T. Pelio, Chief of the Barangay and Community Affairs Division, Operations Management Services, Ministry of the Interior and Local Government of BARM, Ms. Carisha Ann Cruz, Senior Policy and Project Development Associates of IPA Philippines, organizers, guests, and all the participants in today's webinar, good afternoon. Before I give my reaction and insights on the topic and findings as presented to us, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity to analyze and appreciate the study and the results of the impact evaluation on Project Brave, as well as to share some information related to the objective of this study. Also, and more importantly, I would like to commend the PIDS, the IPA, and the Synergia Foundation, Inc. for your efforts in contributing to the enhancement and strengthening of the barangay justice system in the BARM. The paper mentions that the trainings covered three main topics: general procedures of the BJS, mediation and conflict resolution skills, and case documentation. It also states that Synergia organized community town hall meetings in coordination with local barangay officials to raise awareness of the conflict resolution services that the BJS offers, the role and responsibilities of the Lupon members, as well as the advantages of going through such a process. It can be surmised from the said information that the thrust of the approach is increasing the reliability and success rate of the BJS in the BARM through, number one, capacity building for the barangay, specifically as regards the Katarungang Pambarangay, and increased awareness on the part of the residents. With capacity building trainings and information and education campaigns, such as those conducted as part of this study, we can expect, as we in fact saw, an increase in awareness of the constituents and competence and mastery of the barangays, specifically the Lupon and the Pangkat, with regard to the Katarungang Pambarangay law. In turn, we hope that this will result in an increase of the level of trust and confidence that the people have for their barangay's ability to help them resolve their differences or arrive at an amicable settlement. With an increased trust and confidence, it can be expected that people will opt to bring their dispute to the barangay, not just to air their grievance or because it is required before they can file a case in court, but with a real intention to arrive at a compromise. The purpose, conduct, and presentation of this study is certainly needed and timely. In fact, from the vantage point of view of the Supreme Court, it is among the priorities and as embodied in its SPJI, or the Strategic Plan for Judicial Innovations. One of its activities is to strengthen the foundations of Sharia justice, which will ultimately benefit the BARM. This objective includes the following activities: constitution of Committee on Sharia in conduct of institutional review and assessment of the Sharia justice system, evidence-based study on the expansion of the mandate of the Sharia courts, study on strengthening the Sharia legal education system, and review of the Sharia rules of court. In fact, This year alone, the Supreme Court held the first National Sharia Summit held in Cagayan de Oro with a vision towards bolstering the support for Sharia justice in court. Also, the Court and Bank promulgated a decision whereby it emphatically stated that Sharia courts are autonomous bodies which do not need to lean on civil courts, thereby recognizing that Sharia courts are intended to be self-sufficient adjudicatory bodies with its judges possessing specific expertise in Muslim law and customary law. The relation between the IPA study and the efforts of the Supreme Court go beyond the fact that these cover the same territory. As I go along with my discussion, we will see that these efforts go hand in hand in improving dispute settlement and conflict resolution in the BARM. Achieving the study's objective will undoubtedly benefit us citizens in many ways, but before I discuss the said benefits, allow me to give a brief overview of the history of the BJS and how it complements the Philippine judicial system. While the courts or the entire judicial department, for that matter, had already been constitutionally established since the adoption of the 1935 Constitution, Katarungang Pambarangay is an innovation that came a few years after the adoption of the 1973 Constitution. PD 1293, signed on January 27, 1978, created the Katarungan Pambarangay Commission, charged with the duty of studying the feasibility of instituting a system of resolving disputes among family and barangay members, the barangay level without recourse to the courts. PD number 1508 established a system of amicably settling disputes at the barangay level to help relieve the courts of such docket congestion and enhance the quality of justice dispensed by the courts. It was deemed desirable to formally organize and institutionalize a system of amicably settling disputes at the barangay level. RA number 7610, approved on October 10, 1991, or the Local Government Code of 1991, specifically Section 399 thereof, created in each barangay a lupong tagapamayapa, composed of the punong barangay as chairman and 10 to 20 members. The lupon shall be constituted every 3 years in the manner provided in the Local Government Code. Thus, you can see by 1978, we already have the judicial system and the barangay justice system both involved in one way or another in the termination of disputes. In this slide, you will be shown the resolution of actual cases or controversies is an exercise of judicial power, a power that is constitutionally lodged in the Supreme Court and the lower courts. However, looking at the resulting justice system in the Philippines in general, putting an end to a dispute is actually not done in courts only. As discussed earlier, we have the BJS or the Katarungan Pambarangay, where the punong barangay or pangkat helps people resolve their dispute out of court. This method of ending a conflict is not under the judicial branch of government, as in fact it is under the executive branch, being done through the barangay instead of the court. The provisions relating to the Katarungan Pambarangay are found in the Local Government Code of the Philippines. The courts, on the other hand, are created and governed by Article 8 of the 1987 Constitution, Batas Pambansa Bilang 129, or the Judiciary Reorganization Act of 1980, among others. Take note, however, that the barangay only helps the parties resolve their dispute and does not resolve the dispute for them, because technically, only courts can resolve disputes in its exercise of judicial power. In the context of BARM, the area covered by the study, the following bodies and courts are involved in the justice system: the barangays as discussed, the Sharia courts, the PD 10 number 1083, or the Code of Muslim Personal Laws of the Philippines, the Sharia courts, Article 137 created the part of the judicial system that with courts of limited jurisdiction that are known to be as Sharia district courts and Sharia circuit courts, which shall exercise power and functions in accordance with this title. Sharia courts and the personnel thereof shall be subject to the administrative supervision of the Supreme Court. Republic Act Number 11054, or the Organic Law of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, Section 7 thereof, created the Bangsamoro Territorial Jurisdiction as part of the Philippine judicial system. This slide shows the process where basically when a conflict is brought before the barangay under the BJS, take note that this is just a simplified overview and that there are certain acts that are also performed in connection with the BJS but are not shown here. What happens in litigation? This is an overview. The parties go to the barangay, and if they are not settled therein, they resort to the filing of a case in court. The case will be raffled, and then it will undergo pretrial mediation or JDR, trial proper, judgment, resolution, appeal, and final and executory decision. Now, this slide basically compares the duration and expected expenses between a BJS and the courts. It's just an example of a criminal case that falls under the continuous trial. SC Circular number 1493 disseminated that the laudable purpose of the Katarungan Pambarangay Law may not be subverted and its effectiveness undermined by the indiscriminate, improper, and or premature issuance of certificate to file actions in court by the Lupon or Pangkat secretaries. It says that if a certification to file action is properly issued, then the court will proceed with the case. Otherwise, if it is filed in the court and the certificate to file action was not properly issued, the court can either dismiss the case or suspend the proceedings and refer the same motu proprio to the appropriate barangay authority. In Ngo versus Gabelio, the court emphasized that the complaint is dismissible for failure to comply with the mandatory requirement of barangay conciliation as a condition precedent before filing an action. Evidently, the barangay failed to exert enough effort required by law to conciliate between the parties and to settle the case before it. Now, what are the benefits of an effective BJS? First, time effective. It is cost effective. It promotes peace and security within the area. Faster. And lastly, but not the least, it contributes to court decongestion. In Pang et versus Manaknes Dao S, the court said that the key in achieving the objectives of an effective, amicable settlement under the Katarungan Pambarangay Law is the free and voluntary agreement of the parties to submit the dispute for adjudication either by the Lupon or the Pangkat, whose award or decision shall be binding upon them with the force and effect of a final judgment of court. We'll share with you some data. As of this date, there are more or less 42,000 barangays, while in comparison, there are 2,541 first and second level courts organized nationwide. So investing in capacity building trainings to increase the competence of the Lupon members, in my opinion, is a worthwhile investment, especially considering that they effectively have a 3-year term following the local government code provision that the Lupon shall be constituted every 3 years in the manner provided in the said law. In fact, according to the DILG, Lupon members shall hold office until a new Lupon is constituted on the 3rd year following their appointment, unless the term of any of the Lupon members is sooner terminated by resignation, transfer of residence or place of work, or withdrawal of appointment by the Punong Barangay with the concurrence of the majority of the members of the Lupon. Bearing in mind the above considerations, factors, and targets, one suggestion may be to design to design and regularly conduct specialized trainings in mediation, conciliation, and arbitration techniques for the Lupon, as well as periodic performance assessment, with the goal of increasing the success rate of their out-of-court dispute settlement, which ultimately enables the parties to achieve a true compromise. Furthermore, data gathering, sharing, and correlation with the court data may likewise help in measuring constituent awareness and the competence level and success rate of the Lupon. With that, I'll end my presentation, and again, congratulations to the convener of this worthwhile webinar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Assistant Court at Ignacio. Yeah, I really like how you provided us with a background on our judicial system and explain how the barangay justice system complements the Philippine judiciary. And I like also how you pointed out the importance of alternative dispute resolution mechanisms such as the BJS and how it can actually contribute to increasing access to justice. You know, if we empower our barangay justice system to be able to handle community level disputes, then that can decongest cases in the lower courts, promote peace and order in communities, and build stronger trust in the system. So it goes to show how interventions such as that of Synergias align with the Philippine Development Plan of strengthening these alternative dispute resolution mechanisms to enhance its capacity and build awareness and trust, as we've seen the results from this study. And yeah, I also realized that this webinar is very timely now that we also just recently finished our barangay elections. And I think supposedly around this time, the barangays should have elected the Lupon members. So hopefully, we see more of these initiatives to really strengthen the BJS. Thanks again, Assistant Court at Ignacio. Now we will go even closer to the study's context and see how the BJS relates to their initiatives towards a Bangsamoro justice system. So now we will hear from the Ministry of Interior and Local Government of the BARM. We are honored to have Chief of the Barangay and Community Affairs Division, Chief Cecilia P. Pelobilio. Chief Cecilia started her career in local governance in 1992 and tirelessly continuing her government work for over 30 years. She now serves as the Division Chief of the Barangay and Community Affairs Division under the Operations Management Services of the MILG in BARM. So Chief Cecilia, I now turn it over to you.
Thank you, Ma'am. My courtesy and respect to the Country Director of Innovations for Poverty Action, Mr. Aftab Opel, the President of the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, Dr. Anicito C. Orbita Jr., to Ms. Maria Isabel Fernandez, the Associate Research Manager of the Innovations for Poverty Action, to my fellow discussant, Attorney Maria Regina Adoracion Ignacio, the Assistant Court Administrator of the Office of the Assistant Court Administrator of the Supreme Court of the Philippines. To each and everyone present in this public webinar, dubbed as Enhancing Conflict Resolution through the Barangay Justice System, the Impact of Project Brave in BARM. Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. May peace and mercy and blessings of Allah be upon you. And advance Merry Christmas to our Christian brothers and sisters. At the onset, I would like to express my gratitude to the organizer of this event for the trust given me as one of your discussants in today's activity. In behalf of our ministry, let me congratulate the brave project team for your huge and significant accomplishments in capacitating the Lupon members of the 98 barangays coming from Hulo Sulu, Yagapo, Antaraca of Lanao del Sur, and Buldun and Paglas municipalities in the province of Maguindanao. We are truly happy to know that our barangays are the recipients of this project, considering that they really need assistance in terms of capacity intervention. Barangay Justice System, or similarly referred to as the Katarungang Pambarangay, is one of the basic services to be implemented by the barangays as stipulated in RA 7160, otherwise known as the Local Government Code of 1991, and in BARM, it is further strengthened through the passage of the BARM Local Governance Code. Barangay justice system as an alternative dispute resolution to litigation and lawsuit is perceived as preferable method of dispute resolutions in our area. It is cheaper and quicker. It is flexible and informal, and it is confidential. It also preserves the relationship of disputants, and it reduces the workload of the judges. The findings of the study, which you have presented just a while ago, are the products of the actual researches conducted, and it provides us insights for our barangays in BAR. We admit that the constituents in our barangay, specifically those situated in the far-flung areas, are greatly challenged in terms of accessing justice system from their barangays due to some circumstances. Thus, provision of initiatives like Project Brave is very indispensable so that governance is graduated and still felt by the people, even in the most geographically isolated and disadvantaged area. For this, we are extending our gratitude and appreciation to all partners of PIDS, the IPA, the Senior HIA, and GSERF. Furthermore, we also believe that if only barangay leaders and Lupon members are given appropriate assistance or technical assistance to improve their competencies, we can expect them to perform well on their mandated tasks. Barangay leaders, both elected and appointed, as well as other workers like Lupong Tagapamayapa, help in the delivery of the barangay justice system in our areas in BAR, as they are considered frontliners in the delivery of all government programs and services for our people in need, and the community would have a sense of ownership in the services given by the barangay local government units. They all need our attention and concerns. Let us work together and equip them with appropriate knowledge and skills in terms of mediating conflicts arising from their constituents to help preserve public order for them to live peacefully and harmoniously as one community. As head of the Barangay and Community Affairs Division, I personally appreciate your recommendations. I do agree that there is no one system that applies to all. We need to tailor fit the program based on our unique context in BAR. Secondly, in relation to the practical applicability of the program, we need to improve and increase its implementation so that it would become a norm or go-to system of the barangay officials in its institutionalization. And it would be much more easier because it is already a common practice among service providers. Thirdly, changes in different trends and concepts are being introduced in government system, and demands of the constituents are also changing and increasing. There is also a need to conduct research in improving the program based on what we have gained and what are the lessons we have learned from the current implementation, and based on the trend and demands so that the program would continue to evolve and adapt in the changing timelines. Because what might be applicable today may not be applicable in the next preceding years, especially in us, in BARM. Thus, I assure you that we will utilize them in our future planning and in the implementation of our different programs. For information, currently we have crafted our own modules, which we have already cascaded for the foundational basic orientation for the new set of officials in view of the just concluded barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections held last October 30, 2023. This is under our Bangsamoro Barangay Newly Elected Officials Program, which is a term-based integrated capacity development intervention for elected barangay officials. It is geared to enhance their competencies to attain the need synergy to transform the barangays as champions of excellence in basic service delivery and bring the government closer to the people. This program is also aligned to the National Bineo program. Again, let me reiterate that Project Brave through the Synergia is greatly appreciated and we deeply acknowledge your assistance. Allow me to share our other programs in the ministry, specifically under our division. We have the Lupong Tagapamayapa Incentives Awards program. This is both a regional and national program which aims to provide due recognition to the barangays who have exemplary performance in the implementation of the barangay justice system. Through this, barangays are encouraged and motivated to exert efforts in settling disputes lodged at the barangay through their Lupong Tagapamayapa members. This is conducted annually, and winners with the highest rating are eventually sent as entries for the national LTEA to compete with other regions in the country. Last 2022, a barangay from Ampatuan Municipality in the province of Maguindanao was declared as the top 2 winner for the 4 to 6 class category in the country. Likewise, this program also helps in increasing level of awareness and trust of the community. During the assessment, we have learned on the unique strategies that the potential barangays are doing in order to popularize the barangay justice system to their constituents. They have flyers distribution, conducting recorrida, posting of tarpaulins, conducting house-to-house visitation, pulong-pulong, and barangay assemblies. Hence, like the results presented, we also see robust, positive, and significant differences in the knowledge of the community and their level of awareness. More significantly, the strength of the Lupon members is also enhanced and improved. Along with this, we also have other programs like Search for Model Barangay. This is our own program for barn barangays as our motivation for them to be a model of good governance for the 2,590 barangays in the region. We have prescribed the prerequisites for the barangays to be eligible to join in this program. First, a barangay shall be one of the regional finalists of the Lupong Tagapamayapa Incentives Awards. The most crucial part of the assessment is the presentation of their innovation as one of the indicators, and we see the importance of having partners who can provide interventions for the barangays in improving their skills on documentation. Mostly of the barangays have accomplishments, but they lack proper documents. I therefore conclude that if all barangays in BARM effectively implement the barangay justice system and utilize all mechanisms and support, then the government will have a robust system that can de-escalate small-scale problems to record in the barangays. Lastly, utilizing your findings and recommendations, we aim to build a strengthened partnership between and among partners in helping us attain our goal to have a functional, accountable, and performing constituents LGUs to achieve an empowered, cohesive and progressive Bangsamoro. That would be all. Thank you and a pleasant afternoon to each and everyone.
Thank you so much, Chief Cecilia. We're glad to hear that this study is valuable to your work and, to look into ways on how to further strengthen our barangay leaders to perform their duties and deliver services, including the Lupon. And we're very glad to hear that there are already initiatives in motion. Thank you so much for sharing more information about your programs. We're very much open to working together to see how else we can move forward towards achieving peaceful communities, and perhaps we can also revisit and think about the recommendations as well of the study. So thank you so much. Again, we'd like to thank our speakers and discussants for sharing their knowledge and insights of this topic. So now we've arrived at our Q&A sessions where we can answer your most pressing questions, or perhaps if you have some clarifications about the study or some of the insights shared, we could hear more from our speakers this afternoon. So we will be reading questions from Zoom and Facebook Live. So at this point, if possible, if our speakers and discussant can turn on their videos, if your bandwidth allows, so our audience can see you when you answer the questions. Okay, I think we're ready. Okay, maybe just a quick question from Sir Stephen. Will there be a publication forthcoming? Isa, maybe you can take this about the project.
Yes, so we are working to get the study published specifically on the interventions for the barangay justice system members, the Lupon. And this is with the rest of the research team, such as Dr. Michael Abrigo, who's our senior research fellow at PIDS, and also Yuna Liang and Eduardo Velado from IPA.
Hi, great. Is there like an estimate on when you think that will be out, or when they can expect that?
Likely next year, hopefully early next year, but considering the journal publication time, sometime next year.
Okay, no problem. Thanks, Isa. Okay, so there are a few questions on the methodology. So maybe I can start with one and then I can ask some of the other questions for other discussants. So on methodology, how did you manage or prevent response bias through using the vignettes?
So that's a good question. So the first rendition of the vignettes came from a round of focus group discussions that we did with barangays in farm. And we did that because we wanted to make sure that the conflict was something common across barangays to make it realistic. And in terms of preventing response bias, we tested the questions through a series of bench testing and piloting to also assess what the response was to each questions. And then we did a series of revisions after that to get it sorted. So it was quite a long process to get that instrument right. Of course, like I'm not going to say that there is zero risk of response bias. There's always going to be a risk of response bias when you're using survey data. But that was the process that we followed to minimize it as much as possible.
Okay, thanks, Isa. Another question on methodology. So this is from Dr. Julius Relampagos from University of San Carlos. What criteria did you use in the selection of matched pairs of barangays between the control and treatment groups?
Thank you for that question. Due to funding concerns, we couldn't do a baseline. Timing and funding, we couldn't do a baseline. So that was out of the question. So what we did use was publicly available barangay level data. And let me just put that out. Isha, is it okay if I share my screen so that I can show?
Sure. Yes.
Oh. So it's kind of a lot, but these are the list of variables that we use to do the matching. Well, this was a balance test, and then we collated all of the publicly available barangay level data that we could find from PSA and also on the geographical characteristics of the barangay amenities. We looked at population demographics. And then from there, we did a series we ran a series of different rounds of the matching. Much of the variables that we chose had some evidence of its correlation with conflict. with the prevalence of conflict. So that also factored into our selection of the variables. And then also to add to that, we did find from the survey that there were still significant differences in terms of household demographics from the household surveys and from the Lupon surveys. And so we did control for that in our regressions. So that was their wealth index, their age, gender, religious, their religion, ethnicity, and so on and so forth. So we did control for that as well.
Thanks, Isa. Thanks for the explanation. Hopefully that answers that question. Okay, so shifting to Assistant Court at Ignacio. So, ma'am, so one of the goals of the Supreme Court under the strategic plan for judicial innovation is to increase access to justice. So, learning more about interventions on strengthening the BJS, and based on your experience with the courts, what do you think are the other ways to empower the Lupon members to make them more effective and to build stronger trust in the system, in your opinion, po?
Well, in my opinion, also, if there are activities wherein they will be taught or information about the latest rulings of the court that has something to do with the barangay justice system, that would be great, so that their knowledge about the barangay justice system would be dynamic in the sense that they're updated with the rulings of the court. Let's say, for example, as regards the effect of a compromise agreement reached in the barangay justice system, etc. So, plus maybe if there are invites also from the courts, because there are stations in the courts wherein judges go, they also conduct training to, let's say, enhance the knowledge or the competence of the members of the BJS. So maybe those are some activities.
Thank you, po, ma'am. Okay, and now for Chief Cecilia po, on the part of the ministry, so yeah, you mentioned nga po that we just recently finished the barangay elections, and from among the programs you mentioned po earlier, what do you think or what are the immediate priorities po of the ministry in terms of helping the barangays or the Lupon, at least those that you can share po for now in terms of the initiatives po of the ministry?
Yes, ma'am. For us in the ministry, as I have mentioned, we have already the module being developed for the barangay officials, specifically for our own barangays in the region in Farm. And among the 4 modules, we have the module for the peace resolutions, wherein our assigned MLGUs in the areas will help cascade about barangay justice system, so that the newly elected punong barangays, the newly minted barangay officials, will gain knowledge what is barangay justice system, the scope, the composition, everything about katarungang pambarangay. In the presentations provided in the study by Ma'am Isa, that is really true, no? Because in the field, all disputes are being lodged in the barangays if the barangay officials are visible. But if there is no functional barangay officials, it is very difficult for the residents to access services from them. So for us now in BARM, we are very optimistic that with the new set of officials and with our new workforce in the ministry, we will be able to help our barangay officials in terms of capacitating them on their roles no, to provide those services for their constituents.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, to the point now of having, you already have the modules. So, for example, like Synergia has this training program, and with the study, there are recommendations on how to like tailor or refine, yung training program po. Would you know if there are plans how to like parang streamlined these efforts of service providers and also from government to enhance yung mga training po sa ating mga Lupon members. Or yeah, I'm not sure if Isa, if you have also ideas on what's the next step regarding the training program under Project Brave.
Sorry, Isha, is that question for me or
Either
Chief
for you
Cecilia?
or yeah, Isa or Chief Cecilia. Yeah, just curious like how in terms of like streamlining these efforts both from the government and also other NGOs and on building capacity of the Lupon, and whether there are already discussions on how to synergize these efforts.
Sige po, Chief. I'll start lang po with this. So on this, I believe Synergia and they are here. They think that I'm answering incorrectly for them. Please feel free to chat. But there is intention from Synergia from based on our previous discussions together, that they do intend to continue providing these types of programs for barangays, especially for barangays that have had a history of decades of conflict. So there is that intention to do so. They are looking for funding to do that, of course. And I think that this program is quite complementary to MILG's program. So MILG also provides training to these barangays, and they are complementary. For the control barangays who did not receive the program by Synergia, for some of them, we did ask them, did you receive similar training elsewhere? And they did name the MILG. So as Chief Cecilia mentioned, there is that program for barangays. There's also the intention to continue that as well, such as in addition to their Lupon ng Tagapamayapa Incentive Awards. I hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Isa. I'm not sure if Chief Cecilia, if you'd also like to share po. You're on mute po.
Yes, ma'am. To experience na brown out kasi. Okay. For us here in BARM, pardon. For us here in BARM, ma'am, we really consider helping our barangays through their Lupong Tagapamayapa members, no, that they will be capacitated. So in our framework for the Bibineo program, we see to it that capacity interventions for Lupong Tagapamayapa is one of our priorities.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, shifting back to some questions regarding the study. So this is for Isa. So from Sir Reniel Gondran, glad to know that you went to the grassroots part of the region. It's quite amazing to see the group's courage in doing this evaluation. I'd like to know if there are any gender-specific dimensions in barangay conflicts in BARM, and if so, how do they manifest?
That's a very good question. Is this for me? Okay.
Yes.
So that's quite a difficult question to answer. It was outside of the scope of our study, but there's one thing I also want to note is that there are conflicts that do affect primarily a certain type, a certain gender, right? So, for example, domestic violence tends to have female victims. Also, conflicts with regards to assets or fight against certain land conflicts tends to be between the heads of the households, which are often men, right? So there is that gender dimension to conflicts that unfortunately was outside the scope of our study, but does merit discussion. Unfortunately, I can't provide more details, but then it is a good question.
Thanks, Isa. And actually, there's a second part of his question, but I think we can also ask this to our discussant. So he also wants to know how can a sustainable and inclusive peace building approach be developed to address the root causes of barangay conflicts in BARM, say promotion of interfaith dialogue and understanding among communities. Yeah, I don't know. If Isa, would you like to start, and then we can go with Aha Ignacio and then Chief Cecilia.
Sorry, this is a sustainable and inclusive peace building approach.
Yeah, to address the root causes of barangay conflicts in BARM.
Okay. So there are numerous organizations that are doing, like NGOs that are doing this in the BARM. For example, Synergia effectively does this through their education programs, right? Where they incorporate peace education. There's also the promotion of interfaith and dialogues, but not just that, but also dialogue between IP groups, between government, to promote understanding and trust between these sectors. Also, in terms of strengthening vulnerable sectors such as women and children. So there are definitely a number of programs and approaches that are being conducted within that region and outside of the region as well. I can't really speak to it. I'm sure the discussants will have more to say. But there are conflicts, I would say, is unique or more commonplace in the BARM. For example, land conflicts. It's not something that you don't find outside of BARM. You also find land conflicts in the BARM, right? But the unfortunate reality is that for much of the large-scale conflicts in the BARM, much of that has to do with land ownership. And you have IP groups who have ancestral rights to certain parts of the BARM, but they cannot prove it because they don't have legal documentation for that. That does lead to significant conflicts. So that's all I can say.
All right, thank Isa. Assistant Cardinal Ignacio, would you also like to share your thoughts on this book and how we can achieve sustainable, inclusive peace building approaches to address the root causes of barangay conflicts in BARM?
Well, honestly, from the point of view of courts, we're not too involved in the peace building approaches because I think it's more appropriate and lodged with the executive departments. But if there are cases, should there be cases that reach probably the judges, then probably they can just factor in their decision some, let's say, sensitivities that are prevalent in the community. I think that's where the role of the judges as decision makers would be important, being aware of what's happening also within the community. But as to the active role in the sustainability development, I think again, it's with the executive. So I hope I gave some of my insights also.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. No worries. But yeah, and as you mentioned, baka po sa executive branch with the MILG po natin, Chief Cecilia, would you also like to share po your thoughts on this matter? You're still connected po. I understand na nag-brown out po ata sa kanila. Okay, maybe we can get back to Chief Cecilia. So while we wait for her to reconnect, another question regarding the study. So yeah, one is asking if we have any if Isa, if we also looked into the nature of cases that's usually reported by respondents, and whether these cases are actually cases that can be handled by the BJS. Yeah, did we also ask from the respondent, like, what are the common cases that they report to local authorities, and yeah, whether we can also determine whether these cases can be handled by the barangay justice system.
So we didn't really go into specifics. Due to timing constraints, we couldn't get the administrative documents from the barangays to get the collection of the cases that they handle. Also, we were only able to survey 5 households within the barangay that are near the barangay as well. I cannot speak to the whole population of Park. But then from the survey data, when we ask them what they think would be common causes of community conflicts, the largest proportion of respondents say that they are due to family disputes or RIDO, just long-standing conflicts, conflicts regarding land holdings, conflicts due to poverty, right, or debt. Interesting enough, the cause of community conflict that was reported by the smallest proportion of respondents was due to religion. And from our focus group discussions as well, they say that religion does not cover the bulk of most conflicts. There are, but it's usually because of assets, poverty, land. Yeah, that's all I can say. That's from the scope of our study, which is 150 barangays, which is also not a representative sample of Park.
All right. Thanks, Isa. Thanks for the clarification. Related to that, there's another question. So conflicts among elites in the LGUs, including barangay level, the real peace agreements. She wants to know, is this covered also by your study when we talk about, contextualizing the results?
No, it's not, because conflicts between government personnel is not covered by the BJS.
Okay, thank you, Isa. And then I'm not sure if this was also covered in the study, but would we know, like, what is the perception of the people in the communities towards the barangay captain, the Lupon, and the BJS in general? Do the people find this fair, impartial? What did we find in the results?
Again, so because of the study and our sampling method, this is not a representative sample of the barangay. And also the way we randomly selected households was not from barangay lists. Because most often barangay lists were incomplete, or we couldn't get them. So to be partial to all barangays, what we did was we calculated a random number from which we would figure out which household to interview. And typically they are households that are close to the barangay or close to the center of the barangay. So again, they're not representative of the entire barangay. So when we surveyed these households and we asked them what their perception of the barangay was, it was overly positive. But we also have to be wary about, the sampling strategies, the randomization selection process that we use to survey these respondents. They are not representative one. They are not representative of the barangay. They only allowed us to do comparison for the impact evaluation. But from the data, it was overly positive.
Okay, thanks, Isa. Yeah, hopefully, with our responses, that also, there's also another question related to like the generalizability and applicability of the findings. Hopefully, that also gave some clarification to that. Another question is from Sir Harvey Niere. I am a Christian resident from MSU Marawi. Christians in the locality have the perception that justice systems in the area doesn't work for them. So the recent bombing in our campus was perceived as part of the long string of injustices inflicted against Christians. The Maranao can use Rito to extract justice, but Christians have nowhere to go to seek for justice. So in our study, we also consider the demographic characteristics, especially in the mixed ethnicity of the barangay? That's a question.
I have no comment on the problem that he stated. But regarding the question, the demographic, we did ask whether they were Magindanaon, Maranao, Tausug. We asked if they were Muslim or if they were Christian. So we did ask them these questions, and we found that 99% of our respondents across both the Lupon survey and the households were Muslim. And depending on what province we conducted the survey in, most of them were Magindanaon, Maranao, Tausug. There was some Iranon, but Christians formed a very small proportion of our respondents.
Thanks, Isa. And then, yeah, there's another question, but I think you also mentioned that for our surveys, we actually translated right in the local languages, especially on the vignettes, right? So because we know some of the Lupoans will only speak in mother tongue and not in English or Filipino. So yeah, just wanted to confirm that we did translate our surveys and including vignettes in their local languages.
To add to that, we also, the survey firm that we hired to do the data collection, the people that they hired were also from those areas. So they were Magindanaon, they were Maranao, they were Tausug, to make sure that when they do the surveys, it's in their mother tongue.
Okay, thanks, Isa. Chief Cecilia, are you online po? Would you be able to, because there's one question I think that might be best answered po. Okay, let's see if we can get her back po. Ayan, Chief Cecilia, are you there po?
Yes, ma'am. Please repeat po.
Yes, thank you. So there's one question here. So armed conflict location and event data or ACLED studies point
What's
out
the
that
question, please, ma'am?
yes, po. So there's a question on some studies point out that violence in BARM is targeted
Yes, ma'am.
towards
Please.
Sorry. Can you hear me po? There's a question here po regarding there are cases where violence in BARMs target towards barangay officials, especially during elections. There's a question. The question is, wouldn't this have like a chilling effect on the Lupon, and how this is going to work on a case? So perhaps if you have any insights po into that. think, sige, we can try to go back to that po, Chief Cecilia. No worries po. Okay, let me go through other questions here. There's one question here. Did you measure the success of the BJS as a mechanism for settling disputes? Since it's not really a court that can issue court decisions, but it does oversee to compromise agreement for both parties. So I guess this can be answered by Isa and also Assistant Court at Ignacio in terms of like how do we measure yung success po of the barangay justice system as a mechanism for settling disputes.
Well, I think if we would have empirical data on, let's say, how many were filed before the, let's say, for example, a specific barangay, and how many resulted to a compromise agreement, and then probably another empirical data from this compromise agreement, how many were 100% honored or there were no records of any breaches. Then from there, probably that would be evidence-based or a feedback mechanism wherein a particular barangay would be able to know whether their efforts in discharging their mandates through the BJS prove effective. That's just my personal feedback mechanism, because at least it's based on actual conflict that were brought before the barangay. And then probably another comparative data from among those that were brought to the barangay, how many did not result to a compromise agreement, how many percent, well, in terms of percentage or quantity, how many resulted in the issuance of a certificate to file action. Because probably that will have a good idea of the prevailing efficacy or effectiveness of the BJS in that particular area.
Thank you, ma'am. I think that's also something that we can also look into in terms of like measuring impacts or effectiveness of these the system. Isa, I'm not sure if you have any you want to add that.
No, I completely agree with the Assistant Court at Ignacio. Looking at it from an evidence-based perspective is always my suggested approach as well. So I agree with her. Whether we did that, so the question is, did we measure success of BJS? We tried to, which is why we also surveyed the barangay secretaries to get a sense of their caseload. So the number of conflicts brought to the barangay, as well as case disposition or case resolution. But we found that the quality of the data that they provided to us was not, did not meet certain standards. It was, we couldn't collect data straight from the administrative records. And there was also concern about conflicts that were not documented as well. So because of those issues, we were not able to really look into that outcome, unfortunately.
Okay, thanks, Isa. So hopefully, maybe in the future, if we are able to work again on this space, then maybe we can measure like longer term outcomes and see, impact of these barangay justice systems. Another question on the methodologies. Were the barangays in the study chosen because of their low settlement of cases rate? That was this part of the statistics considered for the match?
No.
Okay.
So from the 98 barangays that received the program of Synergia, we used propensity score matching to find barangays that did not receive the program that were statistically comparable so that we could assess or evaluate the impact of Synergia's program. So we did not have those types of selection, those types of selections.
Okay, thanks, Isa. This is not more of a question, but yeah, I'll mention this. This is from Sir Marvin Ulit from I think DILG if I'm not mistaken. So there's a DILG memorandum circular on 2023-022 or the Lupong Tagapamayapa Incentives Awards on enhanced criteria and guidelines used as a reference material in the development of the modules, particularly on the Katarong Pambarangay system. So this policy outlines what the National Awards Committee are looking for in the successful implementation of the Katarong Pambarangay. Yeah, perhaps, if there's, interest to explore further, we can connect with you and see what we can do more in this space, given the results of the study. And now we know that there are a lot of initiatives, both from organizations such as Synergia and also the MILG, how to synergize all these efforts to really build the capacity of our barangay justice systems. Okay, I think there's another question in Zoom. I guess this would be one of the last few questions. So from Tersani, what more can we do to strengthen the BJS in containing conflicts and preventing case escalation to the formal courts and or violent extremism? So perhaps this would be final thoughts on the matter. Hi, Ignacio, would you like to start?
Okay, again, I think it's probably enhancing the trust or the confidence of trust that a certain community has with respect to their barangay officials. That's one. Probably also awareness of how reconciliation or peaceful settlement before the barangay affects the wait. Another is probably to promote that there's this barangay justice system, because maybe not everybody within the locality are aware of the mechanism. So increasing the awareness of the people as regards the barangay justice system, and then empowering all those who are involved, because in the ultimate, if you empower them, the trust level in the system will also increase. So I think those are the possible ways by which you can prevent the escalation of conflict to the formal courts.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm not sure if Chief Cecilia, if you're
yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Maybe you can also
Yes,
provide
ma'am.
your thoughts
Yes.
on that.
Okay.
What more can we do
On
to
the question, what more can we do to strengthen the
Yes, ma'am.
BJS in containing conflicts and preventing case escalation to the formal courts and or violent extremism? It is very important that we shall continue the provision of capacity development interventions to our barangay officials as well as to our Lupon members. And most importantly, we shall provide the basic services to the people, because if the people in the areas are not served, of their basic services, there will be more conflicts in their area. So we believe that raising awareness of the community is very important, there is barangay justice system in their community, and they can rely on their barangay officials and upon members to settle their conflicts and not resort to the formal courts immediately because it is very costly. No? So we believe that more informations to be given to the people in the community will give them more uh, will help them access the services in their barangay.
Thank you po, Chief Cecilia. Isa, would you like to add? Actually, we still have time, so I might be asking just a few more questions.
Okay. To add to what's already been mentioned, I think it's also good to emphasize the fact that this is a understudied area, as you mentioned at the beginning of the webinar. There's not many studies that on this topic, and more so the evidence from other studies that are done in other countries, other contexts show mixed results. So you can have interventions to help improve community-based justice, but they don't always lead to positive impact. Sometimes they can be quite negative, right? So it's not always the case that it can lead to positive impacts, unlike here in the Synergia study. So I would always stress the fact that we need to do more rigorous research, generate more rigorous evidence so that we can have better informed policies and programs. I think the next clear step from my perspective is to do a more longer term impact evaluations to determine whether or not capacity building, community engagement, and these campaigns do lead to behavioral changes or perception changes within the community, and whether or not they do lead to communities relying on barangays more for their conflicts, and whether that also leads to more peaceful barangays. That is a question that is not answered by our study that I feel would be an important question to find evidence for. So that's one thing that we can do. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Okay, now that we have Chief Cecilia back, I'm so sorry po ma'am na brown out po sa inyo. There's one follow-up question po after you've shared po yung mga programs that yung mga initiatives po ng MILG. So a follow-up question from Sir Harvey. What are the programs of BARM government that ensures to protect vulnerable ethnic minorities in the region? I guess in relation to the BJF.
Yes, ma'am. In BARM, we have the Ministry of the Indigenous Peoples Affairs, and we believe that our ministry, the MIPA, is doing very well in their mandates to protect the minorities in the region.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, yes, so we do have more time, just got confirmation. So actually there are several questions regarding the vignette. I think it's also important. So Isa, if you allow me to share some of these questions specifically on the vignettes that I used in the study. So one question is, how did the respondents answer on how they resolve land conflict, like using the vignettes? Yeah, that was one question.
Okay. So the vignette, how it's structured, is it's a step-by-step approach across the entire BJS process. So for example, one question would be, okay, so Ahmed brings the case to you. How would you instruct him so that he can file the case with the BJS? So what are the necessary procedures or steps that you have to undergo so that this case is filed? Right. So from there, that's how that's where we give space to the respondent to answer from their knowledge what would be the steps for them in their barangay to file a case. And it can be different across barangays. Maybe they need to file some paperwork or fill up some paperwork, which is actually the procedure, or maybe they just need to go and speak to the barangay captain. So the way that they go through this process differs. We do find some of these differences. And then from there, we go step by step. Okay, so now you file the case with the BJS. How many days do you have? How long do you have before you can call both parties to the barangay? So it's really step by step. And then once they're there, and then there's discussing what strategies will you use to help mediate their conflict? And then we give them that space to discuss all of the strategies that they know, how they would approach it. And our enumerators, following on, I see there's another question there on how we trained our enumerators to ask these vignettes. First of all, we trained them on the barangay justice system so that they understand the procedures, the process, the documentation, right? They cannot ask these questions without having that background knowledge. So we train them on that. Second of all, we did train them how to go through these questions and how to tick on the survey the answers from the loop-on respondents, because these loop-on respondents, they're not going to respond in the same way as the choices that we've set up on our tablets, on the questionnaire. So we've trained the enumerators or the interviewers to be able to interpret their answers in a way that we can put in as data points. Another important part of the vignette was that we indicated which questions the interviewers can follow up on or ask for clarification on or provide examples, and which questions they cannot, because it would be leading the respondent to a certain answer. We didn't want to influence them in certain ways. So we also trained them on that. So it was a 3-day training session for the survey team. It was extensive. And there, on the question of how did they answer these questions, I would say there was variations, but it wasn't as open-ended as you would think. These questions were quite specific.
Okay, thanks, Isa. And yeah, thanks for answering the other question related to that, how we trained our survey team to ask these questions for the vignettes. And then one last thing, I think, on the vignette. So how did you sort the answers for propensity score matching?
So just to clarify, the propensity score matching was done prior to the survey and prior to the data collection and the use of the vignettes. So the propensity score matching allowed us to identify who we need to interview. And we did that using publicly available barangay level data. And then from there, from that list of 150 barangays plus replacements, that's where we conducted the vignettes. So we didn't use the vignettes for the PSM.
All right, thanks for that clarification. Yeah, so thank you for the questions. I think just looking through, yes, both from Zoom and also from Facebook Live. Thank you for sending in your questions. So Chief Cecilia, there's one more question for you. I also sent it through the chat. So the question is, what if the community has more IDPs or internally displaced persons, and they use different justice mechanism, like forming a council of elders? Can they still do this despite there's already a BJS? Or yeah, what are your insights to that in those situations?
On that question, ma'am, yes, we did not refrain them from forming council of elders, since council of elders really help in the settlement conflict in our area. We value the wisdom of the elders because the people highly respect them in our area.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Yeah, I think we've gone through a question. So if there are other questions that we might have missed, please feel free to send them in. And yeah, if we don't have time, we can also send these questions to our speakers and discussants, and perhaps we can still follow through with our discussion. And again, we're very much open to explore more on this space and how we can work together and do more work in the justice sector. So perhaps as an end to our Q&A session, perhaps there's a few more like one or two takeaways from our speaker and discussants before we end this session. Yeah, maybe Assistant Coordinator Ignacio, would you like to start po?
Well, I think the value of investing really, again, I would like to emphasize in strengthening the Katarungan Pambarangay system, not just in the BARM alone, but in all barangays as well, is a tool for dispute settlement and promotion of peace and order. So probably we just need to also help each other in strengthening the barangay justice system, because if you have settled the conflict at the earliest possible time, then the peace and order in that area would definitely be guaranteed, instead of, let's say, waiting for some more time before the conflict is resolved. So probably all the branches of government, even us from the judiciary, although it's not our mandate, probably we can also help in strengthening the barangay justice system, probably in if they need resource speakers on how to properly observe the procedure, then the courts would really be willing to partner, collaborate, coordinate with our other duty bearers and stakeholders in this. So I think that's my main takeaway in this discussion, because the peace and order in that area is the primordial consideration of everyone.
Thank you so much po. Thank you po. Chief Cecilia, would you like to go next po?
Yes, for us, ma'am, it's very important that we have learned from your study the need of our barangays. This is very important for us in the delivery of our initiatives to the newly elected officials, no? Enhancing capacity and competence for them to really perform their mandates. And we, the service providers, will provide those need in terms of our capacity interventions for them. And with your help also, we can provide them.
All right. Thank you po, Chief Cecilia. And hopefully, after this, we can reconnect and see what explore more ways on how we can collaborate po in the future. And lastly, Isa, would you like to share your final thoughts on this?
Final thoughts, maybe a word of gratitude. So first of all, I'd like to thank Attorney Cortad and the Supreme Court for being such an invaluable partner of IPA, for working with us along these past years for evidence-based policies and reforms. So very much we're very thankful to have you here as a discussant, Attorney Cortad Ignacio. Also like to thank the MILG and specifically to Chief Cecilia and her division for providing us with the endorsement that allowed us to do the data collection within these barangays. Without that endorsement, this study would not have been possible. So we are very thankful to the MILG, also to Synergia, who have worked with us the past years to help conduct the studies, from the focus group discussions to the research design, and now I think they're here in the webinar. Also, as we disseminate the findings, they have been a wonderful partner, and also to PIDS for allowing us this opportunity to share our findings of the study. This is I'm very grateful to have this platform where we can share our study findings with all of the participants across different government agencies and organizations. And lastly, I'd like to thank the Global Community Engagement and Resilience Fund, who provided us with the funding support that made the study possible, and also who funded Synergia as well as other organizations that do PVCE work. So thank you to GSERF. That's all from my end.
Thanks so much, Isa. And can we give a round of virtual applause to our speakers today? Thank you, Isa, Assistant Court Ad Ignacio, and Chief Cecilia. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you lending a few hours of your busy schedule today to share your insights and to be with us in this webinar. This is very important and timely topic. Thank you also to our participants for sharing your thoughts and questions as well. I hope this discussion sparked more interest and perhaps ideas for future research and possible collaboration related to strengthening our local justice systems here. And I believe with our discussion, there's a lot more, there's a lot of potential and opportunities to do more in this space. Okay, at this point, I'll now turn it over to Meili.
Thank you very much, Miss Isha, Miss Isa, ACI Ignacio, and Chief Pelobilio. The discussion was really insightful for today. So ultimately, the strength of BJS is its community-based setup. And because it is administered by community members, we can see that disputing parties are more comfortable and in discussing their problems and exploring solutions. So BJS truly helps to dispensate justice at the grassroots level. So before we wrap up our program, let us have Mr. Aftab Opel for his closing remarks. He is the country director of IPA Philippines and Bangladesh with nearly 3 decades of experience in development. He has worked on implementing and evaluating programs in socio-economic development across Asia. Previously, he served as the first country director of Vision Spring Bangladesh, focusing on market-based solutions for clear vision among those living on less than $4 a day. As head of programs at WaterEd Bangladesh and sector leader for SNV in Laos, he oversaw various water, sanitation, and hygiene behavior change interventions and capacity building programs. Additionally, he has published numerous articles on poverty and migration. Sir, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
What a lively discussion we had. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Philippines Institute of Development Studies and Innovation for Poverty Action, I would really like to express our sincere gratitude to all of you joining us today for this important webinar. We really appreciate your interest in learning more about this innovative initiative and its impact on strengthening the local governance and justice system through the Barangay Justice system. We are really grateful to the Synergia Foundation for implementing this project and for the dedication to building peace and stability in Burma. I would really like to extend our special thanks to the presenter and her team. Thank you, Isabel, for sharing your very insightful and expertise with us today. Your presentation was so informative and engaging and provided valuable data and analysis on the impact of the project. Distinguished panelists, thank you so much for your so thoughtful discussion and reflection. The participant, I see that we had more than, we have nearly 100 participants so far, and then your active participation and so insightful questions were really essential in the success of this webinar. We really appreciate your engagement, your commitment to the finding a solution to these complex challenges facing BARM. The technical team, thank you for ensuring the smooth running of this webinar. Your professionalism and expertise really contributed greatly to this productive experience for everyone involved. We are confident that findings presented today will make a significant contribution to our understanding of the role of the local governance, and it can play in prevailing violent extremism and promoting peace in Burma. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time and so lively discussion. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Director Opel. It is our pleasure to partner with IPA for today's webinar. Okay, so we're now at the last part of our program, but before we officially end, let me announce the winners of our raffle draw for today's event. So for those joining us for the first time, we randomly select winners from our audience for every webinar. From Zoom, we have Shaid Ali Muhammad from the Mindanao State University and Grace Asuncion Nolong from the Department of Justice, Manila. From Facebook, we have Ninette Prado of the Pangasinan State University, Lingayat Campus. So we will coordinate with you on how to claim your small gift or token from us as an appreciation for taking today. So for taking part today's event, our webinar team will get in touch with you soon. So once again, we appreciate your attendance today. The speaker's presentation will be available on the PIDS website at www.pids.gov.ph/events. Please also help us improve our webinars. Kindly answer our feedback form through the link on your screen and in the chat box. For those watching us via Facebook Live, the link is shared in the comment box as well. Please note that the e-certificate of participation will be sent to your email automatically following the submission of the feedback form. Your feedback and recommendations are helpful to us as we work on making our upcoming events better. So keep in touch with us as well. You may follow PIDS and IPA's Facebook, Twitter, or X and YouTube channel for more updates. Also, feel free to visit our websites for more information. Finally, we'd like to extend our gratitude to various organizations from the government, academe, civil service organizations, and other international organizations and private sectors for joining us today. We hope that this webinar has not only sparked conversations but also prepared the ground for meaningful discourse. As this is our last webinar for this year, we sincerely express our deepest gratitude to all of you who participated today and to those who have been with us since February until now. We look forward to having you next year as well. We would also like to wish everyone a happy holidays. Let's carry the spirit of joy, kindness, and togetherness with us into the coming days. May your hearts be full and your holidays be filled with warmth and happiness. Muli, isang mapagpalayang hapon po sa lahat. Hanggang sa susunod na pagkikita, maraming salamat po.
Recording stopped.